wondering how to get clear skin, how to reduce stress on skin, or perhaps how to make stress your friend? Perhaps you need to take care of your gut health and your gut bacteria. Do you know it is linked with your heart health and your skin? Well, we are going to uncover the emotional patterns and all of these questions in this particular podcast because we are going to discuss impact on your skin through all of these emotional patterns and things like that. This is the podcast episode if you are being troubled by skin challenges. In this podcast, in this episode, we are diving deep into the stress management, gut health, and emotional triggers that affect your skin. So, when you talk about integrating science and soul, how do you combine biology, neuroscience, and energy awareness in your aesthetics work?
Well, and a lot of it is already in that integrative esthetician course. But ultimately, I teach my students at a very simplified version of what quantum physics actually is. Ultimately, in a nutshell, literally, it's basically that everything is energy. This table is energy. We are energy. And so, and we know that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And also, energy just changes form. And so I teach the students to start looking at themselves and their classmates and the people around them and their families from a little bit of a different perspective. And then I go into the neuroscience and I explain how that subconscious is programmed. From in utero to about age 8, where when children are awake, primarily they're in theta brainwave. And that is akin to hypnosis. And that's how we become a human. No parent has ever said, okay, little baby, when I smile, I'm happy. Children, babies and children just figure this out. And it's because everything is coming in that hypnotic state. So first of all, for example, if I'm going to do a chemical peel, I need to make sure that that client is healthy so that number one, their body can produce and work with that chemical peel to produce the desired result. And second, when we do remove that acid mantle, that protective layer from the skin, that the person isn't going to be at risk. It's part of our immune system. So if they're out at, let's say, the grocery store and their hands have been touching the dirty cart, and then they all of a sudden, without realizing it, are touching and we've removed that acid mantle and they're unhealthy and their immune system is already very taxed, they could potentially get an infection from that. And so it's about thinking all the way around the entire client service unit to determine what's best.
Right. Are you wondering how to get clear skin, how to reduce stress on skin, or perhaps how to make stress your friend? Perhaps you need to take care of your gut health and your gut bacteria. Do you know it is linked with your heart health and your skin? Well, we are going to uncover the emotional patterns and all of these questions in this particular podcast because we are going to discuss impact on your skin through all of these emotional patterns and things like that. This is the podcast episode if you are being troubled by skin challenges. In this podcast, in this episode, we are diving deep into the stress management, gut health, and emotional triggers that affect your skin. Because today I'm thrilled to introduce truly transformative guest, Cindy Tusa. She is a licensed esthetician, educator, former nurse, and the founder of White Magnolia Advanced Skincare Institute. This is a place where science meets soul and estheticians are taught to think deeper. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So glad to have you, Cindy. And we are so interested in discussing with you the skin issues which have been here on with females of all ages. And how
Right.
are you handling them in terms of, compassionate approach and a mind body skin connection? So let's get started.
Sure.
So, first of all, you talk about the fact that it's about the skin, but not about the skin. So, can you explain what that really means? What's your approach like?
Oh, sure. 9 years ago when we started our esthetician school, out naturally, because I was always challenging my students to not just look at the skin as just trying to beautify it, but recognizing that our skin being the largest organ of our body is connected to our body. And so if we're not healthy in mind, body, and spirit, then our skin is not going to be healthy. And so it's always about, you can look at the chemical imbalances that someone might be experiencing and how that's affecting the skin. You can look at the microbial imbalances that someone might be having and how that's affecting the skin. Or you can even go energetically and looking at how stress affects the chemicals and affects the microbiome, and therefore it is going to affect the skin. And then even deeper than that, when we really talk about stress, if we get really down to it, it's our subconscious programming is running the show. And that programming is how we perceive our environment and therefore how we experience our stress. And so really, when we keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper, we finally get to where the subconscious mind and our beliefs about ourselves and our beliefs about our environment are impacting our skin.
Wow. So the environment that we live in, the kind of stresses that we take on, that plays a part on the skin health as well. And through treatments, we can take care of those things, is what your institute is all about. And what's your approach like to handle that kind of stress?
Sure. Well, traditional aesthetics is performing things like facials and waxing and makeup and beautifying the skin and doing things like microdermabrasion and chemical peels and other services that are deeper exfoliation. And then in some places, they even do laser and microneedling. And all of these are great for benefiting the skin. There is no doubt. I am a huge fan. But for long-lasting results, if we're getting those services, let's just say microneedling, for example. If I'm getting a series of microneedling services, but my body isn't healthy, number one, I'm not going to get as good of a result. And two, those results aren't going to last as long. So yes, get the services that give you those results quickly, but then work for the deeper aspects of our total health that are going to help those results last longer.
Right, right. So when somebody is struggling with persistent skin challenges, what is the practical strategy that perhaps you could recommend starting today?
Well, that's a tricky one. And this is one of the foundational practices that I teach with my students is when I have a client come and I am doing their consultation, I'm asking questions all about their lifestyle, their health, what they're doing with their skin. But it goes way deeper than that. I'm listening to the client to try and find out how they're really doing. How healthy really are they? Because our physical health and our non physical health are equal players in the game. And so we can't ignore one or the other. And so every individual is going to have different services or products or treatments that are going to benefit that individual. It's really, our society, we're so big on we want one magic bullet that's going to fix all of the issues.
True.
And really, we need to look at each person as an individual because what works for one person because of, their skin type and their skin condition may not work for another because the deep reason for that skin condition is very different. So it's really hard to say what's one thing. If I was going to encourage your audience, though, I would say find an esthetician in your area that you can partner with to do work hand in hand with so that they can customize services that are going to benefit you. Not only are those services like a facial, if you find someone that really gives a great facial, they are worth their weight in gold. Because not only does your skin just really reap the benefits from the products and the massage and all of the aspects of the facial, but that connection piece with that person, with the right intention, and that stress relief that we get in that hour or hour and a half can be profound because it might be the only stress relief someone gets in their entire month or their entire week.
Yeah,
So so I can't give like a do this for everybody.
right.
But that's one, but partnering with someone in your area to provide those services for you is really beneficial.
Something like a skincare routine, perhaps, that you could suggest so that they also take care of the skin on their own.
Sure. You know, good cleansing, good moisturizing, and probably protecting from the sun. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily slathering our entire bodies in sunscreen and preventing us from receiving any sunlight. But it does mean to, if I'm going to be out for a really long period of time, I need to protect my skin from burning and from
Wow.
excessive UV. But getting into good practice, using good quality products.
Mhm.
There are millions of them out there. Hmm. And really investing in high quality products that resonate with you is also very important because when you're using products that are fun to use and you love the way they smell and the way they feel and they make you feel good, that in and of itself is a huge benefit. Not only will the more salon grade or higher quality products penetrate into the skin and nourish it from the surface level. So many products that we can buy in drugstores and cheaper quality ingredients and such as that, they're either not penetrating the skin, or if they are, they're not penetrating with things that we would want actually in our skin. So this is where your esthetician can also help with figuring out what products are right for your
Right.
skin type and then using those. And typically salon grade products are going to be better for you, have fewer toxic and undesirable ingredients in them and more really active ingredients like retinols and vitamin C's and plant extracts that can get into your skin and really feed it, if you will.
Right, right. So we have talked in the beginning about the gut skin connection. Can you share some examples of how can gut health really directly influence your skin?
Oh, you bet. I mean, a simple one is I see it all the time. When folks come in and they have a splotchy or their breakouts or basically a yeast infection on their skin. It's very common, at least around here, yeast on the skin. And we don't, again, if I have an overgrowth of yeast on my face, I've got it elsewhere in my body. And what's typically happening is it's either high stress. People often have more breakouts, whether it's yeast or just bacterial on the skin with stress, but also it's very diet related. Sugar feeds yeast. Yeast love sugar. And as we need the yeast in balance, overgrowth of yeast causes us issues. It causes thrush in the mouth and skin conditions. And there are other, and I'm using yeast as a general just fungus. But when we can limit sugar or eliminate sugar and carbs, lower carbs, then we're not feeding that yeast. And therefore, it's going to subside in our gut as well as on the skin. So, so our microbial imbalance internally directly reflects on the face.
Right, right. Tell me something. What do you feel looking at all these understanding of stress and gut and the impact on the skin that you know already, and you are perhaps teaching it in your institute? How do you feel there are common gaps in skincare education versus what you are doing in your integrative esthetician program? What are the common gaps really that you address?
Right. In the traditional aesthetics, like the textbooks in a very traditional education program, folks are getting like checklists of, the person can get this service as long as they don't have X, Y, and Z. But it goes so much deeper than that.
Right.
And so we teach critical thinking with our students and in the integrative esthetician program because it's critical, no pun intended, but it's so important because I need to hear about my client and for one, to determine if they are healthy enough to receive the service. So
Mhm.
just because someone doesn't have diabetes doesn't mean that they're healthy, right? And that's kind of the mindset. It's client consultation is given very little attention in most programs, and it's crucial because that sets the client and the esthetician up for success.
Right.
So, first of all, for example, if I'm going to do a chemical peel, I need to make sure that that client is healthy so that number one, their body can produce and work with that chemical peel to produce the desired result. And second, when we do remove that acid mantle, that protective layer from the skin, that the person isn't going to be at risk. It's part of our immune system. So if they're out at, let's say, the grocery store and their hands have been touching the dirty cart, and then they all of a sudden, without realizing it, are touching their face, and we've removed that acid mantle and they're unhealthy and their immune system is already very taxed, they could potentially get an infection from that. And so it's about thinking all the way around the entire client service unit to determine what's best.
Right. Right.
And that's not what is happening in a lot of programs or most programs. And you can go into even from the safety perspective and being able to be confident as an esthetician,
Mhm.
right? So I know I'm not going to harm my client.
Right.
Then we go into more of like the health component. So we use functional health principles as far as our physical health. And then we also dive into that subconscious and stress
You do?
for the
Okay.
non-physical
Mhm.
health.
All right.
So it's it's multi-layered as far as the benefits that it can provide.
Right. Right. So now you just dipped into the aspect of subconscious healing. So do you also work on the modalities for healing like EFT tapping and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So actually, me personally, my journey, a lot of this is not just my nursing experience and aesthetics experience. It comes from my life experience as well
Mhm.
because I love to learn. And I've been on my own personal healing journey for gosh, 20 years and battling depression, battling physical ailments, all kinds of things. And over the time, definitely the stress and the anxiety and depression were a huge limiter for me. And in 2020 is when I learned that's when I went on my journey learning about the subconscious mind and the power that we can have with transforming it. And so EFT tapping is wonderful. There's EMDR. There are many forms out there. I personally found Psych K, which is PSYCH dash letter K.
Uh-huh.
And and it's a set of processes that help transform limiting beliefs and trauma at the subconscious level. And it's been profound in helping me heal so that I can share it with others and help them on their journey for healing, whether it's related to their skin or what have you.
That just makes me, very intrigued about your personal journey as well, because I'm just wondering that from nursing to aesthetics, it has been quite a journey, right? So, what really inspired you for this kind of a transition? And then you went on to opening this kind of advanced skincare institute as well.
No, unfortunately, it started with because I was a neonatal ICU RN and educator
Uh huh.
and I was the educator for about 8 years. And I loved my job. I loved the babies and the families and I mean, I would still be there. But the politics and healthcare just we went through a big merger and overnight it was soul crushing. And I stuck with it as long as I could. There was a divorce in there as well. So life was pushing me. And I actually ended up with the school. I was guided. It was not something that I was thinking, "Oh, I want to get into this." It came to me. and in a very circuitous manner, but it came to me. And at first, we opened the spa and the school after I got my license and was making my transition from nursing. And and then after about a year or so, that that teaching passion of mine, that educator in me really resonated with the students. And so we closed the spa so I could focus all of my energy on the school.
Uh-huh.
And it was the best decision I ever made. I love my students. We have small class sizes, but it's about the individuals. We do education very differently from the norm. We're about the human. We're about trying to discern what's the best way for each individual student and navigating not only the school portion, but the life portion as well.
Right, right. That's just so interesting. Although I do understand that you've had a bit of challenges in between, but sort of you were guided, you were inspired towards something which perhaps your heart really wanted. And this is what we are talking about on Luxury Unplugged podcast. Success meeting spirituality. Spirituality meaning something which is of inner peace, right? Where you're blending in
Sure.
with whatever you are wanting as a goal, but also sort of, being in line with your heart. So, when you talk about integrating science and soul, how do you combine biology, neuroscience, and energy awareness in your aesthetics work?
Sure. Well, and a lot of it is already in that integrative esthetician course, but ultimately I teach my students at a very simplified version of what quantum physics actually is, because
Okay.
most people are confused by it. Ultimately, in a nutshell, literally, it's basically that everything is energy. This table is energy. We are energy. And so, and we know that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And also, energy just changes form. And so I teach the students to start looking at themselves and their classmates and the people around them and their families from a little bit of a different perspective. And then I go into the neuroscience and I explain how that subconscious is programmed, from in utero to about age 8, where when children are awake, primarily they're in theta brainwave state. And that is akin to hypnosis. And that's how we become a human. No parent has ever said, okay, little baby, when I smile, I'm happy. Children, babies and children just figure this out. And it's because everything is coming in that hypnotic state. Well,
Right.
that's where the bulk of our programming for how we're going to experience our life throughout life is coming from. Mind you, trauma and repetition and those sorts of things definitely keep influencing that subconscious, but a lot of it comes from that early childhood. And so when I can get the students to kind of understand that and I relate it to their experience, then they go, "Oh, oh." And then when I relate it to stress, and how they relate to stress, then it then we can depersonalize a lot of things. Because then my students go, "Oh, my client came in such a terrible state of mind and they were so nasty, but the second I got her to calm and relax on the table, she was a different person." She's like, "She must have really been stressed about something." Right? So the students are coming to this realization on their own. Instead of going, "Oh my God, she doesn't like me," and taking it personally, they're able to be compassionate and offer that client that space. And it's so exciting for me when I can see any woman, but a young woman, step outside of that dynamic and hold that space for someone that they barely know. It's really profound. But but I take those scientific aspects and I turn it and apply it into real life. And instead of trying to memorize book work, it's about application and recognizing in the small moments where they're actually getting it. So,
Right. That's beautiful, Cindy, what you just mentioned, because you not only talked about the esthetician's role, but also about the subconscious aspect that perhaps you are training the people, the professionals on. And that really helps how you're communicating with your clients, because that's a very important part. Not taking it personally, because if people have come in for a massage or a facial, and they're looking for some skin treatments, they're obviously in some kind of a trauma already, or some kind of relief that they're looking for. Perhaps it is not personal, and that's a very beautiful message, I guess. So yes, I mean, through your institute and through your work, I feel that we have a real blend here between luxury treatments and spirituality, right? And so I would just thank you so much for your time today, making us understand that how estheticians or skincare professionals are incorporating mindset work, and how client consultations can really be about subconscious understanding also. So thank you so
You, of
much for your time today, Cindy.
course, it's my pleasure.
Loved having you on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.